Hey friend, welcome to the Branding with Jade podcast. I'm Jade, also known as the Aussie Adventuress, and I left the high-flying corporate world to chase my dreams and build an online business. Now, my biggest passion is teaching you how to get paid to be yourself doing what you love. If you want my secrets on all things personal branding, marketing, entrepreneurship, and making money doing what you love, then lovely, you are in the right place. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Branding with Jade podcast. Woohoo! I really hope you're feeling wonderful on this fine day. It's actually Melbourne Cup Day here in Australia, and for those of you that don't know, it's basically known as the race that stops the nation, and it's one of my favorite days of the year because it falls on the first Tuesday in November, and my birthday is on the 6th of November, tomorrow, by the way, which often means that it falls on my birthday or at least in my birthday week. And so every year I love celebrating Melbourne Cup, and for as long as I can remember, I've been out and about doing stuff with my friends. Back in Perth, we used to always celebrate it. And last year, my 30th birthday fell on Melbourne Cup Day, so my boyfriend treated me to this super fancy hotel stay, and there happened to be a really good event on at the hotel, and it was just so much fun. And then this year, it's crept up on me, and I have no plans, and it feels so weird because I have always celebrated Melbourne Cup. And so I decided to just get dressed up in a fancy outfit, and even though I'm just sitting at home, and I thought while I'm recording my podcast, I'll treat this as my Melbourne Cup Day celebration. So welcome to the celebration. I have a very fun topic in store for you today, and I am feeling super pumped because I have just had a really awesome week of networking and personal development. I got to meet one of my absolute idols. For those of you that follow along on Instagram, you would have already seen that I met Marie Forleo last week, and I had envisioned us becoming best friends, but obviously with hundreds of other people lining up for her attention as well, that wasn't going to happen. But a girl can dream, right? Anyway, I still managed to get a hug. I got some fabulous photos with her, and she loved my top. So that's a start. I was so excited. I was like, I have to wear the most out there, outrageous top for Marie because she's so cool, and it worked in my favor. So if you want to see how fabulous we look together, the link to the pic is in my show notes. You can go and check it out. And I'm just going to put this out there to the universe that next time I meet Marie, it's going to be at some fancy New York event, and we are going to become besties. I'm putting this out to the universe now because the last time I called something out, it happened. I actually was never meant to get a picture with Marie. I never had a VIP ticket because they sold out before I managed to get one. And so I just had a standard general ticket. But at the last minute, I put a call out saying, universe, give me a VIP ticket. I really desperately want a photo with Marie. And within an hour, I had an email confirming that there were tickets available. So if I can make that happen, I can totally make meeting her and becoming besties over a pizza in New York and bonding over our Italian heritage totally doable as well. And she did say she wanted to learn Italian, so maybe I can teach her. So there you go. Anyway, I'm getting way too sidetracked. So aside from meeting Marie, I also had the pleasure of attending my first The Collab Hub event. If you haven't checked this girl out, head on over to her bio. I'll also link that in the show notes because she's awesome. And she just launched this humble collab biz back in July, and it's already grown so much, been the enabler of many collabs, and brought so many Insta besties together over the weekend for a fun wine and cocktail fueled day of learning, networking, and even a bit of branding photography. And I did talk a little bit about this event and why collabs are great for brand building. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out over on my IGTV channel, which I'll also link in the notes. Okay, so now we've got all the fun out of the way. Maybe you can clink a champagne and cheers in celebration of Melbourne Cup Day, because trust me, guys, it's a fun day. Now we've got all the fun out of the way. Let's get back to the topic we're here for, personal branding. More importantly, today we're going to be talking all things, what the hell should you name your brand? Because honestly, I have seen this topic literally keep businesses at a standstill. And sure, your name is important, but I can tell you now, whatever you come up with today probably won't stick. So don't sweat it too much. And I can tell you some awful names that I used when I was first starting out. Free or Life, cringe. Life Without Limits, not too bad. Then there was Corporate Escapee, Lady Boss Lifestyle, and eventually the Aussie Adventurous stuck. Until it finally just made sense to just use my name. Because all these so-called brand names ended up kind of keeping me stuck, and I was putting far too much weight on what these names meant, and I felt like I couldn't share every part of myself because each of these stuck me in a particular niche. Now, obviously, this was all in my head, and it was me putting that weight on the name, but I was also mindful that when people see a particular name, they hold certain connotations with that as well. And so that was constantly playing on my mind. And I thought I couldn't be the person I wanted to be within these brand names. And that's why it just made sense to just use my name. And so that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be talking you through today, is how do you decide whether to actually have a brand name or whether to just use your name? What's going to be right for you? So I'm going to be taking you through that process so you can maybe avoid having to have 20 million different brand name changes like I've had, because trust me, it's not fun having to buy new domains, set up new websites and all of that kind of stuff when you can avoid that simply by following the process and getting it mostly right the first time. So as I was saying, I felt like those names that I was using got me stuck in a particular niche. And so while it's good to have a niche, you also don't want to feel like you're stuck in a box, which is why I love the way Marie Forleo defines herself as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, because it leaves wiggle room to just show up and be yourself. And after all, that is what personal branding is all about. So if you're feeling like you're stuck in a box, then break out of it. You don't need to stay stuck. So there are ways to either come up with names that won't stick you in a box, or to just use your name. Because after all, if you're building a personal brand, you are you, and that's all you really need to be known as. You don't need to have these fancy brand names. But you will see that it's inevitable that as your business evolves, your brand will too. And that being said, in case you do want to go through and have a fun brand name, which is totally cool and it does work, then that's what I'm going to help you with today. So I'm going to give you tips for coming up with a brand name that lights you up. And if all else fails, just use your own name. After all, we are talking about building personal brands, right? Okay. But sometimes a personal brand is being built within a business brand. So when that's the case, what do you do? So if you're having a bit of an identity crisis, then my lovely, this is the topic for you. And it's quite a timely one, because if you follow me over on the Instagram, you'll notice I just did the switch from Branding with Jade to just Jade Scarfone. And honestly, when I started this new account, I just wanted to use my name. It's all I've wanted to do for so long, and I don't know why I kept having all this resistance to using my name. But basically, I finally made a website in my own name. But the reason I didn't make this Instagram account in my own name is because I already had a personal account. So I've got Jade Marie Scarfone on Instagram, and it didn't make sense to refer people to another account called Jade Scarfone. And so I had that in my head that I had to come up with another name. And so I went for Branding with Jade because obviously I love teaching people about personal branding, and 90% of my content is about personal branding. But I think I've got to the point where I feel like Branding with Jade was also keeping me stuck because, one, people get confused by branding, and they think I'm talking about graphics and logos and business branding and all of that kind of stuff. And that's not really my thing. I'm talking about personal branding. And so to really emphasize personal branding, I just want to grow my own personal brand, show you guys how to do it, and prove to you what's possible when you do the things that I do. And so it just made sense to change it, and that's why today I have changed it. So also the reason that I had it like that is because I had my personal account where my friends and family follow me, but honestly, that account just doesn't light me up anymore because it's got 29,000 followers, and it was built through automation, and literally I probably like 1,000 of the followers on there that are my friends and family. Everyone else on there are just random people that don't engage, have no interest, and I've never built a relationship with because I never focused on that account. And so when I go to post on there, it just feels like a chore. And so I thought, why am I keeping attachment to this account just because it's my name and it has my history, and like from before I even started an online business, it's got my history. So I'm never going to delete that account, but I don't want to be putting emphasis on that account because it doesn't hold anything to me and to my business. And so as time has progressed, I've fallen so in love with my new Instagram account. And whilst personal branding is the thing I love talking about and teaching people about, I don't want that to be my Instagram handle, because if I want to do influencer collabs and if I want to just connect with people on a more personal level, then that name is far too businessy. So I'm not moving away from Branding with Jade. I've still got I'm still having the Branding with Jade podcast, Branding with Jade TV. All of that stuff falls within just being my personal brand. And so that's why it can make sense to use your name and then have things coming off it that are business brands. And so that's the kind of thing we're going to talk about today. And so the reason I did just Jade Scarfone is because I kept having this voice in my head saying, just use your name, Jade. Just use your name, Jade. Just Jade. Just Jade. And I don't know if any of you guys watched Will and Grace, but every time I think of Just Jade, I think Just Jack. Just Jack. So I hope that some of you will get that reference because I love Just Jack, and I've always said Just Jade. Like I used to always go around saying Just Jade, and so I was like, that's just perfect. That's going to be my Instagram name, and that is a personal name, so there's no business connotations to that. It's just Jade. It also works for the fact when I say I am just an average girl that started a business. I'm nobody special. I'm just an average girl that decided to get out of her comfort zone and chase her dreams and all of that kind of stuff. So it all ties in nicely and relates really well to my message. So these are things that you need to consider when it comes to naming your own brand. And so that's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about today, because I have digressed again. So I promise I do actually have some tangible tips for you, but I also think it's kind of useful for you to see how my brand has evolved into just my name, because it's a story you hear so often. Entrepreneurs talking about the brand names they had when they first started out and how much they cringe and hate them now, and that they've just reverted to using their name because it makes so much more sense. So maybe you could skip all the naming fuss and go straight to using your own name, which kind of makes the rest of this podcast null and void. But hey, if you really, really do want to come up with a fun and quirky name, then be my guest. It's your brand. You do you. And if that's the case, yay, the rest of the episode is for you. Okay, so now that the fun part's over, let's get into the real meaty part of today's topic. What do you actually need to think about when you're naming your brand? So I'm going to take you through a few things that you should consider each time you're deciding to name a brand. So first things first, you want to know who you are. Now, I just got some images of the scene with the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland saying, "Who are you?" Okay, My mind is going in all kinds of weird tangents today. I'm sorry about that. That is me. And in case I haven't mentioned before, I'm just a total Disney freak as well. So expect loads of those references as we hang out more. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. You don't have to listen to me, but if you can put up with that, then I promise I have loads of awesome value to give you as well. So anyway, let's take a minute to think about that though. Who are you? This is super important because you really can't come up with a powerful brand name without knowing who you are first, which is why my first few attempts sucked. Literally, they had nothing to do with me. Free your life, life without limits. Yuck. So in order to determine your brand name, you need to come back to a few key factors that define who you are. Why are you doing this in the first place? What are your values? What do you want your message to be? What do you want people to know you for? Think about those things. Then you need to take that a step further and you need to understand your brand purpose and your brand criteria. So this kind of comes back to knowing who you are and builds on it further. What do you want your brand to be known for? And this is about thinking about what outcome or end benefit you want to provide to your customer. That's your main purpose. And then on top of that, what are your criteria? So these are like all the other ingredients that make it all a whole. What do you actually want to be known for? So do you want to be known as someone that people can go to when they need someone to make them feel warm and nurtured? Or maybe you're the one they come to when they need some tough loving. Or they want to laugh. They just want to feel young and carefree and have some fun with you. Or they know that they can get a pick-me-up because you're bold and bright and colorful and they love coming to you for that. So think about these kinds of things. And then you also want to think about the industry you're in and whether it pays to be different and disruptive or stick to normal naming conventions that are tried and trusted. So, for example, if you're in like the banking or finance industry, they're usually pretty boring industries and people have just come to know them that way. And sometimes you could go a little outside the norm and try to stand out, but sometimes that's a bit risky because people tend to stick with what they know in that kind of industry. But if you're in technology and development, that is an innovative industry. People want disruption. People want difference. So you can have a bit more fun and be a little different there. Or if you're in branding or graphic design and all of that kind of stuff, it's fun, it's quirky. You want to be different, so you can have a little fun there. So it's important to think about that as well. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to know your customer. So in time, I will cover this topic in great depth because knowing your ideal client is a huge aspect of every part of your personal branding journey. And you really can't make any important decisions without having your ideal client in mind. So some important things to consider here is that firstly, not everyone is going to be the right candidate to be your customer, and that's okay. So when you're making important decisions, you don't need to think about pleasing everyone, because when you actually try to please everyone, you end up attracting no one because you're not speaking to anyone specifically. So you really need to think about a small select group of people that is your ideal client and whether you're speaking to them. So will it appeal to your ideal client? And that's why it's so important to know who they are. Now, ideally, you want to attract people that you'll form a genuine bond with and can connect with on a deeper level, especially if they're going to become your client, because you may end up working very closely with them for quite some time, depending on what you actually offer. But if you're taking on a coaching client for 6 months or 12 months, you want to be damn sure that you're going to like that person, because otherwise that's going to be a hellish 12 months. So you want to make sure that everything you're putting out is stuff that's going to attract the right kind of people to you. So generally, your ideal clients will be quite similar to you. They'll either be at a point where you were not so long ago, usually like 5 to 10 steps back, or they've had similar experiences and have a similar outlook on life, or they they just feel connected to you because you have a similar background, similar lifestyle, that kind of stuff. So they'll naturally feel drawn to you because there's some kind of connection there in your similarities. So some things just keep in mind when you're thinking about your ideal client are, what do they believe? What do they want? What moves them? What are their pain points? What are their pleasures? All of that kind of stuff. How do they think? So for example, if your ideal client is a 25-year-old fashion-obsessed girl who is always up with the latest trends, it probably would not make sense to name your brand Conscious Clothing. And I know that for a fact because that was me at 25. I didn't care about conscious and sustainable brands. I just wanted the latest, fanciest clothes because I was going to all the fancy events. I was going out every weekend. I was partying and I wanted to look the part. So I probably did buy sustainable clothes, and same now, I buy sustainable clothes. I'm a lot more conscious about that now, but I'm not naturally drawn to brands because of that. I'm drawn to them because of their colors, because of the feel, because of the look, because of their name. Some of my favorite brand names have nothing to do with conscious clothing. Like Sass and Bide, for example. It's all about sass and being bold and fun and that kind of stuff. Jericho Road Clothing is one that I've recently become obsessed with. They are a sustainable fashion brand, but there's nothing about that in their name. It's a fun, quirky, different name. So you get drawn in because you like them, and then you'll find the other stuff on the back end that doesn't need to be in your name. But if your ideal client is somebody who is conscious about that and they are specifically out there looking for sustainable clothing, then yes, it would make sense to put that in your name so that they're instantly drawn to you because they're out there searching for that. So you really need to understand who your ideal client is so that you can make this name work for you in that way. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to know your niche. So think about what you love and what you're passionate about. And I know I spoke earlier about being multi-passionate and feeling like my brand names had stuck me in a box. This is true. But I have reached a point where I've been in business for a few years. I've already built an online audience, and now I can talk about it more because people know me, like me, and trust me. So when you're just starting out, there's that know, like, and trust again. I'm always going to be mentioning that. So I really hope that commits to your memory. But when you're just starting out, you really want to be well known for something, so that you become the go-to person in that niche. And this is how your brand will grow, through word of mouth. And as you evolve and as you grow and as you build that trusting and loyal client base and fan base, then you can talk about more stuff. And they're going to be so invested in you already that it's okay to do that. Now, this was a really good point that I got from Marie Forleo the other night as well. And I'm going to keep referring to her because I've just seen her, so I'm still in my fangirl phase. But she spoke about you don't need to, you can be passionate, but you don't need to monetize all your passions. So just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean it has to be tied in with your business. You can talk about it as part of your personal branding because it makes up who you are, and you can tie that in with your content. But it doesn't need to be part of your brand or your business because you don't need to monetize all your passions. So that's a really good thing to remember is, yes, I'm passionate about it. Is it actually part of my business? No. Is it part of me? Yes. I'll talk about it when I'm talking about me and I'm trying to make a more personal connection with my audience, but I don't need it to be at the heart of everything I do. So just think about that. And because if you're trying to do everything at the start, it will be too confusing for people. And sometimes having a name that directly speaks to your niche will help you to become the real go-to for that. So for example, I know that if I want a dose of mindset related content that helps in business, I'll go to a girl called Namaste Janae. Her name is literally a warm greeting linked with meditation and yoga. So I know that when I go to her profile, I'm going to get spiritually aligned content. So she's going to teach me the mindset stuff that I'm looking for. So think about what niche you want to be known in. And if it makes sense, tie that into your name. Okay, so once you know all these elements, so you know who you are, you know your brand purpose, you know your customer, you know your niche, then you can start to think about your name. And there's a lot of different ways you can actually make your name. So these are some things you can consider. You could go with something timeless and evergreen that already evokes certain feelings and emotions for people. You could completely invent your own name that has no meaning at all. Just the downside here is that if you've just completely made up a name out of nowhere, no one's going to be searching for it. No one's going to know what it means. And you'll really need to work hard for people to understand your brand. So that may include big advertising budgets and things like that. So think about whether that's really viable for you and where you are at your business at this time. You could use metaphors in your name. You could go super descriptive, so either using descriptive words that link with something aspirational that evokes emotions, or a descriptive word that ties with a benefit that your brand will give, or just a mashup of a variety of different descriptive words that all relate to your brand. You could also talk about your key attributes, like actually have them in your brand name and link it to your brand value proposition and make that your name. So that makes it instantly clear to people what you stand for, and if it's something they're searching for, they'll find you easily. Or you could be super disruptive, like a name that has completely different meaning and makes a statement. So for example, Apple. Computers and phones are nothing like Apple's. They literally have nothing to do with each other, but Apple has used that and they've done very well with it because they've made a bold statement that they do things differently, and that instantly grabs attention. Now, you need to make sure that if you're grabbing attention, you can live up to these expectations. So another thing you can do is you can use rhyming and alliteration, or you can play on words. So you could use any number of these different types of things when coming up with your own brand name. Now, this is exactly how I came up with my Aussie Adventurous brand. So we won't even acknowledge any of the ones that came before that because they didn't have a lot of thought put into them. But when it came to Aussie Adventurous, I actually did the work and thought long and hard about my brand. So at the time, I was traveling full time and I wanted to encourage other people to travel. So I'm Australian and I pretty much started working online because it gave me the freedom I needed to travel more. But I also I'm proud to be Australian, and I wanted to have some kind of tie to the fact that even though I travel, I still love Australia. So that was tied into my name. I've used alliteration because it's fun, and I think that it instantly does play on, like, stay in people's minds when there's alliteration there. And then my ideal client was someone like me. At the time, it was a 25 to 35-year-old girl who was sick of the corporate 9-to-5 lifestyle and loved to travel, but had also become accustomed to a healthy income and needed a way to be able to fund her adventures. So she couldn't just quit her job without having a way to replace her income. So my primary niche was working online and traveling and teaching people how they could do the same. So that's why I came up with the name Aussie Adventurous. Now, however, as I stopped traveling so much, I started to feel a disconnect. This brand was built to encourage people to travel, to show them the opportunity to build a laptop lifestyle through affiliate marketing. And so when the affiliate opportunity I was promoting ended, the brand no longer aligned with my business goals. So I still have a strong affinity and connection to this brand because I'm still Aussie. I still love traveling. I still like live in one of the most beautiful parts of Australia and love going on outdoor adventures and all of that kind of stuff. But it didn't make sense to me to just switch and pivot and start talking about business and branding on that account. So that's why I started something new. And that's why I transitioned to just using my name, but doing it on a completely new account and platform and things like that, because I didn't want to lose Aussie Adventurous. That's still me, and it's a very different part. So I wanted to keep it separate, but still line them up together. So people know that the reason I've transitioned into talking about business and branding is because I grew a strong brand with Aussie Adventurous. So over time, you might find that as your brand evolves, you may outgrow your name, or it doesn't align with your values or business goals anymore. And as I mentioned, this is what happened to myself. It's what happened to countless other entrepreneurs. And using your own name then means that it can grow and evolve with you, because even as you change, your name is never going to change unless you get married or change it by deed poll or something like that. You're always going to be your name. So by using that, you can grow and evolve without having to constantly think about changing names to suit your brand. And that's why sometimes it just makes sense to just use your name, so you avoid all this confusion and stuff of pivoting and changing directions and then not feeling aligned anymore. So if you're not certain about a brand name, it could just be more beneficial to just go with your personal name. And this is something that no one ever really told me you could do when I first started, so I never even thought about it. But you'll notice a lot of top entrepreneurs just use their names, and it works. Now, it also pays to give some thought to the type of people that you are most inspired by. What did they use, and why are you drawn to them? If you're most attracted to people with quirky, random names, then it would make sense for you to come up with one. But if you tend to follow people that just use their own names, maybe that would make more sense. So remember, you're generally like your client. So what you like is what they will tend to like too. And then once you've come up with your brand name, you want to think about a catchy tagline to go with it. So, for example, with Aussie Adventurous, I actually played on the word Aussie, and I came up with a tagline that used the letter AUSSIE. So I went with avoiding unnecessary shackles and savoring incredible experience. So it was literally talking about getting out of the corporate world and traveling the world, but I just put it into fancy words. And then Branding with Jade, because it's about personal branding and styling and things like that. It's get styled, get social, build a powerful personal brand. It's straight to the point, it's catchy, and it expands on what my name is about. So this way, people get a little more insight into what your brand name is actually about without having to do too much digging. And then comes the tricky part, because you could have put all this work in, come up with the best name, feel so excited, and then there's the part where you go to buy the domain name and it's not available. So the best thing to do is to come up with a list of names that you like, and then do some searching before you get your heart set on one. So go check that the domain name is available, and then use a tool called namecheck.com. This will tell you whether the name is available on all the social media platforms, because if it's not available, you're back to the drawing board. So you want to figure it out early on, and then cross out the ones that aren't available, tick the ones that are, and then go from there. What one really gives you the best feeling? What sits the best with you? So once you've got that, the final thing you want to do as well is make sure that the name isn't trademarked, because the last thing you want is for someone to send you a cease and desist order because you're using a name that they've claimed. And this actually happened to me once. It was just the name of a Facebook group, so it didn't faze me too much. But when I used to run my affiliate business and I had the Aussie Adventurous, I had a Facebook group linked with that called the Adventurepreneurs Tribe. And so it was just a free Facebook group that people could join, where I would talk more about business and branding and all the different things related to my affiliate training and stuff like that. And one girl joined, and I sent my usual message saying, hey, thanks for joining. What brought you to the group? Blah, blah, blah. And she replied and said, actually, I just wanted to check it out because you're using my name. And I was like, what? I didn't know that I couldn't use this name. It's just a Facebook group. I haven't registered the business or anything. And she threatened to get lawyers involved. Now, down the line, I actually learned that she actually didn't have the grounds to do that because she didn't trademark the name. She literally just had it registered as an ABN. So she never went to that step of trademarking it. And I wasn't actually using her name because hers was just Adventurepreneur. and I was using Adventurepreneurs Tribe. So it was different, but I didn't know at the time, and I was scared, and I didn't want to have to deal with lawyers. So I was just like, okay, I'll get rid of it. And I just gave in. So you want to be able to make sure that you've done your research at the start and that you've got your bases covered so that nobody can do that to you, because you wouldn't want to have this build up this huge empire and then suddenly have someone try and stake claims into your business. So you really want to make sure that you have all that stuff covered from the start. And finally, you want to ensure that whatever you do, it remains consistent across platforms. So you don't want to be known as one name on Facebook, a different name on Instagram, and then something completely different on your website. Not only is this confusing for you to keep track of, but it makes it extra difficult for your audience to know where to find you. So keep it simple. And that's it. So I really hope that you found this episode useful. I have created a worksheet that you can use to help you work through the process. So you can access it at jadescarfone.com/naming-your-brand. You'll be able to find a link to it in the show notes, so don't stress. And I really can't wait to hear what brand names you all come up with, and tag me on Instagram when you do so that I can see what you've come up with and share the process. I'd love to see what your brand name is. So, and as I said, just don't worry if over time, as you evolve and change, if you grow out of it. It's completely natural and normal, and that's fine. Don't feel like because you've built something you have to stick with it. Always do what feels right for you. Don't worry about the noise out there. Just do you. That is the best advice I could give you, is just do you. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye for now.